Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we grab a whole stack of sources, could be articles, research, maybe even just our notes, and we pull out the really key insights for you. Today, we're getting into something that affects pretty much everyone, really, whether you're in the market for a car or just, watching how global stuff plays out. We're talking about the big challenges facing the global auto industry right now.
It's a huge topic, definitely. So many moving parts.
Yeah, and we've got quite the stack for this one. We're looking at reports from industry names like Cox Automotive, Sergere.
The data folks.
Exactly. Plus, company briefings, news deep dives from places like Aldia News, the News Wheel, and even an interesting Reddit thread we found. Gives you that ground-level feel.
Always good to see what people are actually saying.
Totally. So, our mission today, to unpack this really complex, tangled web of disruptions. Everything from, tiny microchips all the way up to big geopolitical shifts. We want to figure out how it's changing, how cars get made, how they get bought and sold, and what this, new normal really means for you, the consumer, and for the manufacturers too.
Yeah, there are some surprising things going on. Ford, for example, the scale of what they're dealing with is pretty immense.
Okay, so let's dig in. Where do we even start untangling this? What's sort of the main driver, the initial problem?
Well, a lot of fingers point straight at the global computer chip shortage, the semiconductor issue.
Right.
That really crippled the auto market, starting around mid-2021. And it wasn't just about the complex electronics in cars, though that's a big part. It got way worse because of COVID-19 factory shutdowns.
All right.
And then suddenly everyone's working from home, learning from home, demand for computers, gaming systems, all that consumer electronic stuff just exploded.
Ah, so everyone's fighting for the same chips.
Exactly. Cars, laptops, PlayStations, all competing for a limited supply.
And it's not just pandemic demand, right? There are other tech trends pushing this too.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got things like AI, cryptocurrency mining. They also need powerful chips, adding even more pressure. And then, there's the geography. Some key raw materials for these chips come from places that are, unstable, like Ukraine, for example.
Right, adding another layer of risk.
It makes an already tricky supply chain even more fragile.
Okay, so chips are a huge piece. But you mentioned something else earlier. Less known, maybe. Rare earth magnets.
Yes, that's another critical vulnerability and maybe less talked about. These magnets are essential. They're in electric motors, obviously, but also lots of other systems in modern cars.
And the catch is where they come from.
The big catch. Almost 90%, maybe even more, of the rare earths used by American car companies come from China.
90%, wow. That's a serious dependency.
It really is, and we've seen the impact directly. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, he basically said they're operating day-to-day, sometimes hand-to-mouth.
Just trying to get the parts they need.
Exactly. Like their Explorer plant in Chicago, it had to shut down for a whole week. Not because of chips this time, but because they couldn't get rare earth magnets.
A whole week just for magnets?
Yeah, and that was tied into China bringing in new export rules for these materials. Within weeks, global shipments were cut by half.
Cut in half, just like that. That shows you how quickly things can seize up. So, okay, chips, magnets. How did these specific shortages ripple out into the wider market? What did we see happen?
Well, the impact was pretty immediate. You saw major production halts. Ford had to stop building F-150s at times.
The biggest seller.
Huge seller. And the Edge, Escape, Lincoln Corsair too. Even the Mustang Mach-E line, their big EV push, faced stoppages. And the overall numbers. New car sales in the first quarter of 2022, they just tanked. Lowest level in a decade.
Wow.
Down almost 16% from the year before. It was a massive shock to the system.
16% is huge. So, okay, the supply side is clearly struggling. How does that translate down to us, the people actually trying to buy a car?
Yeah.
What's the feeling out there?
Right. That's the key question for most people. And honestly, consumer confidence surveys show a lot of pessimism.
People know things are messed up.
Oh, yeah. They're very aware. And they expect these shortages aren't going away quickly. 6 months, maybe more. And they expect prices to keep going up.
So it's not seen as just a temporary thing.
No, it feels more permanent. And that's changing behavior. We see almost about 45% of people who are actively shopping for a car now saying they'll probably just wait.
Postponing because of low inventory and high prices.
Exactly. That's a big chunk of demand just hitting pause.
But it's not just pausing, is it? You mentioned earlier, people are actually buying cars differently now, too.
Absolutely. This is one of the most interesting shifts, I think. Ordering a car from the factory and waiting weeks, maybe months.
Yeah, that used to be rare in the U.S., right? For custom orders only.
Almost unheard of for mainstream models. You went to the dealer lot, picked one out. Now, About 1 in 3 buyers say they're likely to just order what they want and wait.
1 in 3, that's incredible.
And the expected wait time is around 10 weeks on average. This whole practice, ordering and waiting, it looks like it's here to stay. It might just become the standard way.
A fundamental change. What about prices? Are people still paying over sticker, that MSRP?
That's shifted a bit, but it's still happening. Slightly fewer shoppers say they're willing to pay over MSRP compared to maybe the peak panic.
Okay.
But those who are still willing, they'd pay, on average, about 20% over sticker.
20%. Still a hefty premium.
It is. And here's the other key thing about the new normal. More than half of people believe prices will stay high, even when supply gets better.
So they don't expect prices to drop back down to pre-shortage levels.
Right. It signals this sort of fundamental reset in how cars are valued, maybe how inventory is managed. People are basically pricing in scarcity now. We might not see those overflowing dealer lots ever again, or at least not for a long time.
That's a big thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's definitely not just about the parts, the chips and magnets. You mentioned broader forces too. Things like trade policy, geopolitics.
Yeah, you absolutely have to factor those in. Take trade policies like the 25% tariff on imported cars and parts that came in a few years back.
Right, I remember that.
The idea, was to protect U.S. industries, encourage domestic production. But what actually happened, according to some of these analyses, was it drove up costs for imported materials, which made it more expensive for Ford, GM, the U.S. automakers to build cars here.
Oh, kind of an unintended consequence there.
Exactly. It created this weird situation where a policy meant to help ended up pushing costs up, maybe even encouraging companies to look outside the U.S. for some things to offset those tariff costs elsewhere.
And did we see a direct price impact from that?
We did. New car prices jumped pretty sharply, over 2.5% in just 1 month after those tariffs hit.
Wow.
And Ford specifically had to raise prices on models they built in Mexico, the Mach-E, Maverick, Bronco Sport, by like $1,200 to $2,000.
Just to cover the tariff costs?
Essentially. And the goal was American jobs, right? But the result in some cases was actually factory shutdowns here, layoffs. GM and Stellantis faced them too. It just added more economic uncertainty.
So tariffs are one piece. What about broader geopolitical stuff?
That's a constant pressure. Tensions in places like Eastern Europe, obviously. The war in Ukraine has had huge ripple effects.
Sure.
Or ongoing friction in the South China Sea, trade disputes. All of these things disrupt that global supply chain ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's all interconnected.
And then you have other persistent issues layered on top.
Right. You've still got general inflation making everything more expensive, shortages of other raw materials, especially the ones needed for EVs. There's also a workforce challenge. The auto workforce is bulging, and it's tough to find and train replacements with the right skills.
The human factor.
Definitely. Plus, quality control gets more complex when your parts are coming from dozens of different suppliers all over the world. And underpinning all of it are huge sustainability questions about mining materials, the carbon footprint of shipping everything. It's a massive, tangled system.
Okay, so given this whole pile of challenges, the parts shortages, the trade issues, the workforce, everything, and hearing Ford's CFO basically admit that the old just-in-time, lowest-cost model made things worse during the chip crisis. How are they adapting? What's the path forward?
Yeah, that admission from John Lawler at Ford was pretty telling. It really signals a shift in thinking. The focus now is urgently moving towards better supply chain analytics, building in resilience.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, Ford, for example, signed a big partnership with Google back in 2021, a 6-year deal to use Google Cloud. The goal there is to really boost their ability to handle data, process it in real time, and get much better visibility into their entire supply chain.
So using tech to see problems coming.
Essentially, yes. They're aiming for what they call a predictive supplier risk monitoring system.
Predictive risk monitoring. Okay, how does that work? Is it just software?
It's more than just software. It means, first, collecting way more data on all your suppliers, their financial stability, but also tracking external stuff, market trends, geopolitical risks, weather patterns, anything that could cause a disruption.
Okay, gathering all the signals.
Then using advanced modeling, AI, machine learning to analyze that data and actually predict potential weak spots or upcoming problems.
Trying to get ahead of it.
Exactly. Combine that with real-time tracking and alert systems. So the goal is you get a warning before the crisis hits, and that lets you take preemptive action. Maybe you start lining up alternative suppliers, maybe you adjust your production schedules, maybe you strategically build up inventory of a critical part.
Being proactive instead of just reactive, that does sound like a fundamental shift. Is this just Ford? Or is the whole industry moving this way?
It seems to be a much broader trend. You see lots of companies embracing tech like IoT, the Internet of Things, using sensors to track parts and materials in real time through the whole chain.
Right, knowing where everything is.
Yeah. And also really working on building stronger relationships with suppliers, diversifying who they buy from so they're not reliant on just one source or one region. And there's serious talk and some action on reshoring or nearshoring, bringing manufacturing processes back home or at least closer to home.
To reduce those geopolitical risks and maybe shipping costs and emissions, too.
Precisely. It tackles multiple problems at once. Plus, companies are getting more agile in their operations, trying to improve inventory forecasting, using predictive maintenance on their own factory equipment to avoid downtime.
And what about those critical materials?
Yeah.
Like the rare earths dominated by China? Any movement there?
Yes, definitely. Companies are actively looking for alternative sources, exploring mining possibilities in places like Australia, Canada.
Friendlier, maybe more stable regions.
Potentially. And even investing in building new processing plants, for example, right here in the U.S., to break that dependency on a single country for processing these vital minerals.
Okay, so we've really taken a dive here, haven't we? From these tiny, tiny computer chips all the way up to global trade wars and seeing how it all connects and reshapes everything from the factory floor right down to, the experience of buying a car.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex.
And it seems clear the path forward for the auto industry is all about building resilience.
Yeah.
Just piece by painstaking piece.
Absolutely. And what strikes me is how permanent this shift feels, this move towards being proactive, using data. It's a departure from relying on those older, more vulnerable models. These disruptions, painful as they've been, have really hammered home that managing a global supply chain isn't just about operations anymore. It's core strategy.
Yeah, absolutely critical. So as the industry keeps scrambling, finding new sources, adopting all this new tech, well, it leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Will this whole era of disruption actually force the creation of stronger, more reliable, maybe even more local supply chains? Could it fundamentally change the global economic map as we know it? Or, will old habits die hard and things going back toward just finding lowest cost once the immediate pressure is off? Something to think about.